think I'm on the right.
All right, now it just went.
Okay.
I need to share.
Still waiting. Oh, previous crap.
Screen. We're going to share.
Oh, man. It won't let me paste. Okay. Got
You
it.
get it? Cool.
Paste.
There we go. See what yours looks like.
Is it playing? Okay. Why is it stopping?
Us.
To streamer. Hey
What's
guys.
up, guys?
We're back late again. Missed a month
Missed an Ides.
for the Ides of March. So just pretend like this is March 15th.
Well, this is it. No, yeah, we missed that, and then we missed February.
Yeah, but this is going to be a good one. We titled it The Devil, No God is in the Details, and we titled it that for good reason, which we're going to go into that phrase later. But think of it like the rainbow, how the rainbow covenant of gods was
taken
hijacked.
over.
So was that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
But
we didn't realize it at the time. I've never heard of
not until I was driving over here.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to be talking about the history of the world and how we're watching them live rewrite history as we go along, with this Potemkin president. And it just got us thinking about history in general and what we think we know about it. And so we're not going to delve into anything or really debunk anything. We want to talk about God is in the details.
And that's a good, the meaning of God is in the details. We found out that this phrase "devil is in the details" actually took off in the 1960s. Right. And the phrase before was "God is in the details." And the devil is negative, and everything is negative with devils in the details. And actually, God is in the details. And if we look at things, we can maybe start to decipher and discern history the way it has really happened, which is it's a big task ahead of us to kind of break down, because we've been, especially since World War II, shown a different narrative, and it's all kind of switched to the world's view. Right. And that's why we played that song
Right.
You know,
we are spirits.
We're spirits of the material world, and there's not going to be a political solution to all these things. It's going to be in the spirit realm, and it's going to be, you know, through God and following God and stuff. And so,
right. And so we're not here to offer doom and gloom along with our enlightenment. We're here to offer hope.
That should be the big message. Actually, when you're following God and stuff, and it's not a chain around your neck, it's everything's going to be good. It's going to be okay. It's all under control.
Right.
But we have choices we have to make daily and throughout the year.
Right.
Going ahead.
And so a few of the things that we're going to touch on, Sun Tzu in ancient Chinese documents. We're going to talk about how the system that we are in is corrupt and it's going to fall and we can't fix it. And we don't want it to. We don't want to
fix it. We don't want to go back
to normal.
We don't want to go back to the scales over our eyes where we're not really seeing what's actually happening.
Right. We want the system to do what it's going to do, and then we want to build something outside the system. We want to, create, build, grow, and once you learn that you're all being led, you're all being coded, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
And we are. We've all fallen for different spells that are out there.
And even as you read these headlines today, and you're like, oh, how can they print this? That they know it's so wrong. Well, they're rewriting our history as we're going along. So we're going to stop paying attention to their narrative, and we're going to talk about what's real.
And we're also going to direct you to some sources that we use that are out there that we want to start looking at alternative channels and stuff and stop the mainstream media, the phrase it's actually real and it's corrupt. It's part of the system
it's
that's
not
corrupt.
Really mainstream.
And there's a lot of people out there, and we don't always agree with every single thing, but there are a lot of good people out there that are doing some good work,
amazing work,
and they're seeking truth. And so we're asking questions. You're supposed to be able to do that. You're supposed to be able to ask questions.
Asking questions is like the most powerful tool in our toolbox. And that's what we're doing. And I told the last scope that we did in January, we ended it by saying we were going to talk about the Red House report. And we are going to talk about the Red House report briefly because the Red House report reveals how the Third Reich ended and kind of morphed into the Fourth Reich, which is economic empire. But I'm not going to go deep into the Red House report because I could not find the substantial.
You used to be able to find it. Now
the CIA,
you can't find it.
I don't know. Maybe it didn't exist, and maybe I thought, but I couldn't find the sourcing for it. But whatever was in the Red House report, or they claim to be was in the Red House report, has so much of it has come true. And I'm just going to briefly touch on those things, and then some other events in history that you might consider going back and looking at the details and not the devil is in it.
And this is where we want to remind, we've said this before, is that God gave us possibilities of seeking wisdom and our own discernment, through God, that we can discern for ourselves. We don't need to watch a screen and then, okay, that's what it is. And even sources, some of these guys we're going to show you, especially like Quantum of Conscious and Owen Benjamin, they'll say right out, don't believe me if you don't want to. I'm not here to turn you over. I'm giving you information and you decide what you want to do with it.
Right.
So, and even, with us here, check on us and find stuff and don't do the trolling stuff and be mean or anything, but,
you can
genuinely look at something. We can take it. We can take it.
But we're asking questions, and we're not saying when we touch on things like the Art of War, Charles Manson, the War of 1812, Genghis Khan, we're not saying that we're right on what we are. And we're not even really suggesting. We're just questioning a narrative.
We're questioning what we've been told. And me and Yvonne have both been students of history. We love it. I love reading history just for the fun. That was my fun. And a lot of times science fiction too, which that's a whole nother ball game. But, I love reading history. And now the last year and a half or so, I've been going, wait a minute, I need to rethink everything that I thought I knew. And another one we're going to touch on is Crow 777. His radio show starts off with belief is the enemy of knowing.
Right.
And I take that to heart and I try to apply that every time I see something, even from somebody that I like.
All right.
I try to discern, and I pray for that a lot. In Proverbs, God says he says to pray for wisdom, but a lot of people miss that he's also saying pray for discernment, because you need to be able to discern for yourself what you're seeing and what the truth of it is.
Right. I think that's one thing we've learned in the last year through COVID is that discernment, even with people that you trusted. And
yes,
I mean, we're all children of God, though, so
yeah,
we all fall
and
short.
that's a good point. Is we need to be careful about feeling superior or thinking we know more than somebody else. Is just that we see it in a different way.
Right.
So we're trying. A lot of us out here, there's still this false binary of division with Republican, Democrat, red, blue states and stuff. And we're trying to, me just personally, I'm trying to step back from that.
Right.
Because a lot of us have a lot more in common with because a lot of people that disagree with me on Facebook or Twitter that I've worked with and I've known throughout the years, we have opposing views on a lot of things, but it's in that warped false binary of red blue that's really in black and white that's really tearing us apart. But working with you guys and remembering you in the past, we have a lot in common. We're hard workers, right, and we have families that we love, and so there's just a couple of things we can build on right there.
Right. So we're going to start with the Red House report. We ended the last scope that we did, nostalgia. It was homecoming or homecoming or nostalgia.
It was homecoming or fear or something like that.
I can't remember the name of it, but
homecoming or heartache or something like that.
It was a good one. But I briefly touched on the Red House report, and the Red House report is a document. It's a detailed account of a secret meeting at the Maison Rouge Hotel in Strasbourg on August 10th, 1944. Their Nazi officials ordered an elite group of German industrialists to plan for Germany's post-war recovery, prepare for the Nazis' return to power, and work for a strong German empire. The three-page report, closely typed report marked secret, copied to British officials and sent by air pouch to Cordell Hull, the U.S. Secretary of State, detailed how the industrialists were to work with the Nazi Party to rebuild Germany's economy by sending money through Switzerland. They would set up a network of secret front companies abroad, and they would wait until conditions were right, and then they would take over Germany again. And the reason I'm talking about the Red House report, even though I could not find the actual CIA report, only what people said was because of this book, The Tower of Basel, which talks about the creation of the Bank of International Settlements. And if you research the BIS, it is the bank of all.
It is the central bank of central banks.
Right. It's not accountable to anybody. No government, no country, no politician. And there's one more thing I want to read about that. You won't understand. I'm just going to read this one paragraph. You won't understand it, but you'll understand the gist of it. The two men agreed that the post-war priority was rapid monetary stabilization through a stable currency unit. But they realized this would have to be enforced by a friendly occupying power, as no German post-German war state would have enough legitimacy to introduce a currency that would have any value. And that unit would go on to become the Deutschmark, which was introduced in 1948. I'm not going to talk much about this. It's very, tedious. It's thick. It wouldn't make for a good, I'd have to work hard at making this like a scope.
Yeah, to condense it.
But I just wanted to read a couple of things. This bank was set up originally to administer reparations.
From the Versailles Treaty in World War I.
And actually, it was used to wreck Germany.
To wreck the German economy, which it did.
And it did. But this paragraph stuck in the chapter of a cozy club in Basel, Switzerland. Wall Street in the 1920s was possessed by a near mania to lend to Germany. In 1923, American banks and finance houses sent abroad $458 million in long-term capital. By 1928, that sum had risen to $1.6 billion. The German credit bubble reached ludicrous extremes, thanks to
and that's
Wall
where
Street.
you almost got like a Zimbabwean type currency because the mark back then, I think it was the Reichsmark or something like that. And that's the Weimar Republic. And their currency was so devalued that you could bring a breadbasket of currency to a market and somebody would steal the basket before they would steal the money because it was so useless.
But the more that I read about it, the more I see that we had a hand in that.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Germany. With the Bank of International Settlements as the central point of contact, these links would endure the Second World War and reshape Europe after 1945. So the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, was the financial
the instrument
glue of what held like all the German corporations like Krupp and IG Farben and all these people who had profited off of slave labor and the deaths of a lot of these people. The Dulles brothers in America.
Yeah, our Secretary of State, and the other was head of the
Director
CIA
of
for
the
a
CIA. Many of whom, so the Dulles brothers would help ensure that the Nazi bankers, businessmen, and industrialists, many of whom should have been tried for war crimes, were seamlessly integrated back into powerful positions in the new Federal Republic of Germany. So, ending with that, we know about Operation Paperclip, America's operation to get a lot of their scientists and intellectuals.
That's how we got NASA.
Yeah, it's how we had Werner von Braun, who was the head of NASA when we went to the moon. So you can see how like all of this is interconnected, and that the Third Reich became the Fourth Reich, and the Fourth Reich wasn't going to be a military empire; it was going to be an economic empire. And you see that playing out.
That's where you get real control, and you get real slavery too.
Right, and basically it's just another iteration of Rome, which we don't. We did a video on that.
We did a video a few episodes back talking about, are we the barbarians at the gates? Because they're calling us barbarians now. And so back then, the Germanic tribes that were supposedly overrunning Rome at the time, people think of it as like a catastrophic fall.
Right. And
it was an infiltration in Rome, and that's a rabbit hole there. This thing about the Red House report's a rabbit hole, but and then segue into another part of it is Prescott Bush.
Yeah.
George H.W.'s granddad. He was. They took money from him. They seized assets in the 30s.
Yeah, according to like our social justice rules and cancel culture, the Bush family should be canceled.
Yeah, they should. Just like they
financed a lot.
Just like the English royal family should.
Yeah,
be. How
absolutely.
evil they are and what they perpetrate.
And the video that we did, all the roads lead to Rome. We happen to think that's where the Vatican, and how in Rome it didn't actually fall. They infiltrated the church, and
the church infiltrated Rome.
Yeah.
The empire itself,
right,
and then went forward from there.
And we still see the remnants of that, the leftovers of that. So,
but just real quick, I want to Prescott Bush had assets seized. He actually tried a coup on FDR right after he was elected, and we're no fans of FDR either.
No.
These are different factions of the same ilk.
Yeah.
That are fighting each other because different factions want the power. They're all kind of going about it in similar ways, but different ones want to be on top in the structure of it. And Prescott Bush is not a good guy. Then his son becomes CIA director under Nixon,
right?
And then later on, he's VP with Reagan,
and then president.
Yeah, and we gotta, these are some bubbles that need to be burst. Some what would you call it?
God is in the details.
Yeah.
George Herbert Walker Bush was head of the CIA when they had the Frank Church Committee. Well, God bless Frank Church. I think he was trying to get to the bottom of things, but Bush made sure that they didn't.
Yeah.
The Church Committee, they were investigating things like MK Ultra, Mockingbird Media.
And some of the MK Ultra stuff probably touches on Ted Kaczynski.
Oh, yeah. Because, in MK Ultra was mind control experiments, and
the CIA basically came up with LSD.
That's a good intro and lead into the topic that we have on Charles Manson.
Yeah.
So Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, a lot of people don't know that when he was 16, he
was a very smart guy.
Yeah.
And he saw a lot of the techno stuff that's happening now.
I encourage you to read his manifesto, because it's so easy to read and it's so interesting. And basically his whole, what do you call it? The premise of the argument of that whole manifesto is about how it was all about how bad the leftists were. And then you add technology to it. But I think that's a lot of the reason they took him down, is because he had a lot of arguments against the left, even though he wasn't exactly conservative.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't. But he was very smart, went to Harvard at 16 years old, and unbeknownst to him, they did mind control experiments on him through the CIA and then I guess professors at Harvard for 3 years. And they would belittle him. They would have him in a room and they would ask him questions.
Well, they would break him.
Yeah, and they'd ask him questions about his beliefs, and then they would mock him and ridicule him and bring him to tears and things. And I didn't know about this until I read that manifesto, and then we did our scope. I didn't know that they had done those things on him. So it intrigued me, because I guess you could say that he was a serial killer if you believe that he's the one that killed them and sent those bombs. And now that I know they lie about everything, I don't even know that. But Charles Manson, who, those horrific murders in the 60s, La Bianca. And
which, you take the Manson, Helter Skelter, the big book by Vincent Buglioso. Oso or OC or something like that.
Yeah.
In 1969, in this span, you had the moon landings, you had Woodstock, and you had the Tate LaBianca murders, the Manson murders, all within weeks of each other, like within a month and a half. That was probably a traumatic experience for the nation at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Think about 1969 and how
there's a lot that went on in the 60s.
How naive a lot of people are, and I'm still naive, because there's something happening right now that we're not getting.
Right.
So we need to think about it like that. There's something happening right now with the narrative of the world that's trying to guide us somewhere, not in a dark place.
Right, and to distract you.
Mm-hmm.
What was I saying about Charles Manson and I lost my train of thought. But Charles Manson, if you read about if you start researching and trying to find the evidence of, everything that happened, what you're presented with is a script and a narrative, not so much evidence. And then you started reading about his background, and he wasn't like highly intelligent like
Ted
Kaczynski. But he was in and out of trouble. He had he didn't have the best mom, and I'm not sure he even knew his dad, but he was put in reform schools, and a lot of the reform schools I saw were run by government. A couple of them were outside of DC, and so that was interesting, knowing what we know about Child Protective Services and the foster care system and Boys Town scandal. And what do you know?
Another important reason for just the family.
Yeah.
A mother and a father and the kids.
And that's how you beat them.
And going with God is that, these people are vulnerable. But
not in intact families, usually. And so he actually was at the Boys Town orphanage in Omaha, Nebraska. And if you don't know about the Boys Town scandal of the 80s, I encourage you to go read about that. But that was a scandal that involved the White House. That
touched on the Reagan-Bush White House and lots of members of Congress.
Yeah.
It just kind of went away. That's part of the narrative of this fallen system we're in, is that the narrative that you get told, it's guiding you in a certain direction. It divides us.
Right, because I didn't even know about that scandal until decades later.
Yeah.
And you and I kind of stayed caught up with the news even back then. Well, as I was reading about Charles Manson, and he had gone to Boys Town and a couple of other reform schools. There was one in reform school where another prominent serial killer. He was called the Lipstick Killer.
I'd never heard of him.
I'd never heard of him, but I don't know. I had a sheet of paper, and I left it in my bag. That was documenting.
You're talking about the different victims. And
how
stuff.
He claimed until he died in prison. He claimed his innocence, that he wasn't the lipstick murder. But I was reading about what all our government did to coerce him, and they gave him sodium pentanol and the truth serum, and there was even one where they did some procedure they did on his back without anesthesia, I can't remember what, but it's very painful.
Pain.
And then after that, and he's young, he's not that old at this time. They get this confession from him, and I'm, knowing how they lie about everything. Now I'm questioning. They're still writing about, and I got it off Wikipedia. They're the ones, but they're talking about it and like it's real, like it's true. Like this is the lipstick killer. Okay, so the lipstick killer went to this reform school, and so did Charles Manson. Well, then you start looking at the Charles Manson murders, like Sharon Tate. What's the actual evidence? The baby.
That the baby was cut from the womb and stuff. But it's all been newspaper stories and books. The main thing is the book Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi, who he was the prosecutor, just like the prosecutors in the O.J. Simpson case and the detectives. They had their little moments in the sun.
Right.
What's her name? Marcia. What was her name?
I can't remember. Can't remember her name. About. I know I can see her.
I just thought of that.
So then I knew that there were other people killed at the Sharon Tate murders, but I didn't know who. One of them was Abigail Folgers, from the Folgers coffee. And then there was a Wojcik.
And here's the thing: is I read that book back in the '90s, Helter Skelter.
Yeah. Really
thick book, lots of stuff in there. Because Yvonne found all these different victims, and it's always been portrayed, and especially from Helter Skelter, the Tate LaBianca murders.
Trying to trigger a race.
There was the older couple, LaBianca, that were killed somewhere else in that part of, I think it was California.
Yeah.
Southern California. But I'd never heard of any of these other victims. And I read Helter Skelter by the guy who freaking was part of the prosecution.
Right.
So what does that tell you? It's lies by omission.
Right.
Are some of the hugest
the dog
things.
That doesn't bark.
Yeah.
And then I didn't research the Polish guy. I'll have to go and see what that was about. But then another guy was a guy named Steve Parent. And he was just some guy from a middle-class family. His father was, when he found out what had happened, was like, what the hell? Like, why was my son, that he didn't even know why his son was there? You could see I think the Wojcik, the Polish guy, Abigail Folgers, and of course Sharon Tate, they're like in the scene. They're full of wealth, but this Steve Parent
But I haven't heard of the Folgers girl either, and I read that book. I had never heard of her. And
so why don't we know about that? And then you start reading the headlines and knowing what you're seeing now as your headlines, and I'm just wondering, how much of that was true?
Yeah, you just think about, you look in the future, somebody in the future is going to look back today, 200 years from now, they're going to look back and say, man, what a racist society. Those people, they hated white people. They didn't like men.
Right.
And it's going to be,
they're going to look. It depends on who gets to write the history books, because then they're going to look at it and go, oh my God, look at all those Nazis at the White House that rushed the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting now, though, because they don't have so much control that they're quashing all these outlets of information. But I'm not saying that the Charles Manson murders didn't happen like they said they did.
But like we said in the beginning, we're going to ask questions, because using our, wisdom and discernment that we can get from God, we start questioning things and looking at some of this stuff doesn't make sense. And we have some other points to go over here. It's just different things we picked out in history.
Right. Like one of my favorite books is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And so then I started researching.
You start diving in. You wonder, is Sun Tzu a real person, or is he a conglomerate of different authors sometime in the past?
Right. And as I was researching that, I came across, different other ancient Chinese documents like the Strategies of the Warring States or the Annals of the Warring States. And what I was most curious about was how we found this information.
From hundreds of years BC.
Yeah, because, we can write down and type things now and carry on this history. But back then, ink was not.
But even now, even this printed page and you've got highlights on it.
Right.
How would we preserve it if you didn't take care of it?
If I didn't take care of it, if I didn't put this in some airtight, container to keep it from breaking down, or I don't know what all that would involve. But you're talking about a time when supposedly the Art of War and these other ancient Chinese documents were written with on bamboo slips and with ink
and rolled into scrolls.
And they say that they lasted and they were preserved because they were buried in tombs and I question that because bamboo. I wrote a thing about bamboo. So bamboo can be. That's not the one I wanted. Bamboo is more susceptible to decay than timber due to a lack of natural toxins. And it's typically thin walls, which means that a small amount of decay can mean a significant percentage change in the capacity. So bamboo must be kept dry throughout its life to protect it against rot. Bamboo must be treated to protect it against insects, namely beetles and termites. Now, I don't know, these tombs that they were buried in, I don't think you could.
Did they keep the termites out? I doubt it, because we have problems with that in today's world.
Right. So as I'm going through and reading about the people who are explaining how we found this history, just some things that jumped out at me. Those works of political views and diplomatic strategies from the School of Diplomacy, that was one of the documents, were in poor condition with confusing contents and missing words. Liu Zhang proofread and edited them into the new book under the Zhang Guo Sei. Okay, Lang Zhu proofread and edited them. So how do I know that he didn't
wipe out what he didn't like from the previous dynasty?
And there's another, the first Chinese dictionary that was supposedly discovered concluded that the major part of its glosses must reasonably date from the 3rd century BC.
And this is the thing is, you get into when you read. Here's another thing about narrative in today's world is reading articles about something landing on Mars or something, dinosaurs.
They found some ancient scrolls in Israel but somewhere.
The wording that they use must reasonably date. And then get to this lady here.
Okay, hold on. Let me finish this thought. So Urya, the dictionary's compilation between the 4th and early 2nd centuries BC, with the possible existence of some core text material dating back to the 6th century BCE. Like
one thing in that what you just read.
Yeah, that must reasonably
BCE. When they say BCE,
that's BCE, yeah.
The new thing going back about 15, 20 years is before Common Era and Common Era instead of before Christ and Anno Domini. And which I'm wondering, I'm starting to question about the Catholic Church and things, BC and AD.
Right.
I'm questioning that too, but now they want us to all, in history books that I read, and I love reading it, and I'll buy stuff, and they'll use BCE now. So we can't use BC AD anymore. It has to be BCE CE. And I've always wondered about that too.
Right.
So another question.
Most of these texts about the Urya, the dictionary, were still extant in the Tang dynasty, but had disappeared by the Song dynasty when there was a revival of interest in the Urya. So they disappeared. And then there was a revival of interest, but it doesn't tell you how did we come up with this dictionary.
And then
if it disappeared,
our historians go, here it is. We found it. Who found it? When did you find it? Where did you find it?
Right.
And it goes to, there's a short segue here. I watched a radio show with Crow 777 or listened to a couple of months ago, and I can't remember the guy's name he had on, and we're going to show his website later. But talking to this guy has researched actual historians, history degrees. When was the first in the modern era, going into back into the 20th century? When was the first history degree, the first history professor? When were they, accredited, anointed, or whatever?
Right.
That's a very recent thing. Yeah. History, and this guy did a lot of research on different universities. And you can go, all these universities, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Memphis, University of Memphis, whatever. All the different departments that they have extensive histories of when they were founded, how long they've been, who founded them.
Right.
But when you get into the history departments, a lot of these universities, you can't find when they were founded. There's not a date. There's not people involved.
Yeah, which is
so
interesting.
You're looking at, and we've said before, World War II changed so much globally, and it just changed people's mindsets and the way they saw the world. And there's so much coming out of that. And then history departments didn't start coming into being until the 1900s. There weren't history professors.
Right.
And so are these guys gatekeepers as well?
Right. Well, I identify as a history professor.
I do too.
And I have the right to do that. So I was researching bamboo and wooden slips, and Wikipedia tells me the custom of interring books made of the durable bamboo strips in royal tombs has preserved many works in their original form through the centuries, which I find interesting.
Which it contradicts
they
the other.
They say the durable bamboo, and
which over here,
the reason that
it's not as good as regular hardwoods.
Right. And the reason I was reading about this is because there's a lot of people using bamboo and stuff in architecture and floors and stuff. But they don't. It has
expensive chemicals to form the bonds. I was going to say you're going to have chemicals to make the bamboo stronger.
And concrete is unable to protect the bamboo from fungal and termite attack. Well, these tombs that they were entombed in, I assume, were concrete or
just rocks.
Bamboo is a brittle material and therefore cannot absorb energy in an earthquake. So my question is, these documents, these ancient Chinese documents, that have survived over the years, thousands of years, with the ink intact. And like you said, one of those that said that it was edited and came up.
This is with a lot of other historical documents and Dead Sea Scrolls and things like that. These things are found. So many things are found in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Yeah.
But they've been around for 1,000 years or more.
Right.
But they weren't found until late 1800s, early 1900s.
Right.
A lot of this, and some of this stuff in China was found in the 1930s. And when one of these, it's found in 1931 that Yvonne found. You know what was going on in China in 1931? There was a Chinese civil war between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, and the Japanese were threatening and coming in and invading Manchuria and stuff. And so during all this, these other guys over here, these professors and stuff, were able to find these wonderful scrolls and all this history and stuff. But all this turmoil that's going on, millions of people are being killed.
Right.
But these other guys over here, well, we can find history.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? The Xinhua collection, which is bamboo slips. There was a huge find of all these bamboo slips. It's called the Xinhua.
Man, they look like they were
collection.
made yesterday.
Yeah. It's that's an 18th century edition of The Art of War. So not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
But the Xinhua collection was donated by an alumnus who purchased it through auction with no indication of its origin. The others are all archaeologically excavated.
There you go.
Hey.
Oh, let me get here.
Go ahead.
Oh, Asher.
So no indication of its origin. So we just take it face value. It's kind of like the ballots, in the election, the chain of custody. Once you've broken the chain of custody, how do you know what's what? Well, you don't. So I'm not questioning that Sun Tzu wrote it, or well, actually, I am questioning. I'm questioning whether he ever existed and who actually wrote it, and maybe that the Art of War was a collection of writers. But whenever you see these finds, these historical finds of artifacts and things from history, where they just write about it like they know exactly what happened, you look at how they lie to your face currently, and we know that they've lied about Las Vegas, 9/11, the Boston bombing, the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, I could keep going on and on. So I would challenge you to, whenever you see these stories, to start looking in the details, because God is in the details, which leads me to my next one, which is, well, no, this is all along the same line. So the Xinhua bamboo manuscripts, it was like 2,300 manuscripts that were found in one place, offers clues about early China. And so here's she's an expert on it. It says, imagine putting together a jigsaw puzzle with a twist. Each time you fit a piece into place, the picture of the puzzle changes. Now you have an idea of the challenge facing scholars who study the Xinhua bamboo scripts.
Now we understand.
Right. The bamboo manuscripts buried safely underground in airtight containers, things that protected them from moisture,
and termites, and
the bamboo manuscripts buried safely underground escaped that fate. All these other ones that didn't make it, how did they escape that fate? What
the language that it had for when they said how it reasonably could be assumed or whatever.
Right. Well, she says it's a bit like discovering previously unknown sections and different versions of some of the books of the Old Testament. The bamboo manuscripts give you a different take on things you thought you already knew. History is essentially a way of thought. When we talk about history, it's not because we're interested in facts.
Yeah.
We aren't. We're really interested in what we think they mean. Now, when you see how the people in power write about like the MAGA movement and like how they classify, that's how they want everybody to think that we think that. And then
we had this.
Nearly everything about the slips is open to debate, from how to read the characters in particular sentences to when the texts were composed and what they mean. So basically,
it's all conjecture. It's
right. And when she mentions the part about, I find this, it's a bit like discovering previously unknown sections and different versions of some of the books of the Old Testament. What were the, history, his story?
Yeah.
Have they hijacked his story the way that they hijacked everything else?
But look for language like this in scientific papers and stuff, because they say study suggests.
Right.
They use words that are not concrete.
Right.
They use
sources say, studies suggest, scientists,
or experts say, experts conjecture, and it's just look at the words have meaning.
Right.
And they put these words in here because they can't say, just like photos. They can't say photos, they say images.
Right. Well, for NASA, it's always images. It's never photos, which I always tweet that out.
And I always like artist rendering.
Right.
That's a good one too.
Well, I can't. I just have I just want the photo.
Yeah. Especially with our technology today.
Should we do Genghis Khan because it's kind of along the ancient, before that War of 1812?
Yeah, I mean, we can, and some of the artists we want to, or some of the guys, people out there, what would you call them? They're not journalists. They're truth seekers. They're looking for truth. And one of them is Quantum of Conscience.
Not live streamers, but people that are putting information out.
He's on YouTube. He's working on his own site because he's getting strikes on YouTube and he's getting knocked off. He's not hateful. He rarely cusses.
Right.
Even that. But YouTube doesn't like him. And so Quantum of Conscience does great videos. And this is what he looks like on YouTube. But he's got some strikes and he's trying to be, good for now. But he's trying to work on his own platform as well, so he can say what he wants to say. That's the thing, is you should be able to, he's not being hateful. He's asking questions and questioning things. And one of the things he breaks down the Genghis Khan and War of 1812, and he does it much better justice than I could do right now. But just taking the logistics of what it would take in the 1200s, the 13th century,
to rule
a third of the world. And look at the 1200s, you're going into late Byzantium Empire, Eastern Constantinople and stuff.
Right.
And he subjugates everybody, and everybody's afraid of the Golden Horde, the Mongol hordes, and it's going up into Europe as well, and all of Asia and the Middle East and India and stuff. And he breaks this down. He steps back and goes, wait a minute, just tell me that this makes sense. That this guy, little tribal guy out on the steppes of Mongolia, just wakes up one day and says, I'm going to conquer the world. And where does he get the manpower? And
how does he communicate?
If he has, did he send out a Twitter alert to all of his guys throughout Mongolia?
That would have been helpful.
Hey, we're headed out, thousands of miles away from your home.
Yeah.
Take them away for years.
Right. The strategy and the resources.
And the logistics of, even if you've got the manpower together.
Feeding the army. How did they eat?
How did they get them there? Keep them there. And I think he broke down talking about, desertions during the Civil War. And with all these battles of Civil War, these guys were, weeks, a couple of months within walking distance of their home.
Right.
Some of them were very close, depending on where the battles were.
Right.
But the horde invading the world, they're 1,000 miles away
from home,
and they just stayed and kept going and fighting and killing
and at the same time reproducing their
replacing their losses with manpower. And
how'd they get back home to do that?
And so he was saying, so one guy was sitting around and he had 60 women he had to keep impregnating over and over again so they could keep the flow going.
It's just something to think about. Like, we're not saying that it's not true about Genghis Khan, but it's not making sense to me now.
When you start breaking it down and looking, instead of just reading and going, oh yeah, man, those guys were powerful. And then he touched on the War of 1812, and this is a big point of it. You look at 1812, at the same time on the continent of Europe, you have Napoleon is basically at his height and power. But I think in 1812 is when he went into Russia. So before the War of 1812 for us starts, Napoleon hadn't invaded Russia, which kind of hurt him really bad. He lost a lot of men.
Right.
But he's dominated Europe. Continental Europe is off limits to the United Kingdom. There's no trade, and so they've got to be hurting. So during that time, England sends an army to the United States and invades us to take us out again. And one great point he had was, now England lost the Revolutionary War, 1776 to 83 or so.
Right.
And they started out with bases and manpower. They had soldiers already in the United States. Right. At the time, it was the colonies. And so 1812, they don't have this infrastructure here. They have to come and reinvade. So they do that while they're fighting for their lives in Europe against Napoleon. And so that just, it made me, and I've been a big student of the Napoleonic Wars and all that time. Right. I'm like, wow, that makes, because I did not, till he said that, I did not put the dates together of, 1812 was in America. Napoleon's at his height. He's kicking butt. He's kicking, right. He's beating Prussia, Austria. He's beating the
He's going to
Italian
come over
states.
and take on America. They just beat them,
he's beaten
a couple
Spain.
of decades ago.
He's kicked England out of the continent. And then at the same time, they come over to the U.S. and invade us and burn the White House down.
Right.
So it's just ask questions.
Which, also brought us to more American history with the flag and how a lot of us are wondering, like, what happened in 1871? Were we turned into a corporation instead of a country at that time? And when you start reading about it, there is evidence that that's true.
Yeah.
But then you start looking even earlier at the founding and at our flag, like where our flag came from. And
so you look at the flag of 1775 that George Washington used for his troops, and I keep finding this thing. And it looks real similar to this flag. See if you can spot the difference. And this flag is of the British East India Company, which was established in 1600, which was a corporation.
It was a corporation.
It was a corporate state within a state.
You know, that's when we dumped the tea, wasn't it? East India's
they would have been a big part of that.
Tea.
And so the difference is we just took the red stripes out of these X's. And
so that maybe, have we been a corporation?
And that's what our Revolutionary Army was following. This is before the Betsy Ross flag,
right?
Which is that's a whole other rabbit hole as well.
Yeah. So God is in the details, and the fact that they stole, the rainbow, God's covenant to man that He would not flood the earth again, and they think of what they've done with that rainbow. They've created, for Christians, whenever we see it, a negative connotation.
Yeah.
For a little while, I had the rainbow up on my
and
profile, and I would get liberals, and then once they figure out that I'm not on their side, but I would also get a lot of conservatives and stuff that would be like, they would ask me about it, and I said that
but we've seeded that, we've let it. Okay,
right.
you got that.
We gave that. We let Satan hijack that symbol and they did the same thing with the phrase, "The devil is in the details." No, God is in the details, and so when you look at current events or history, start going through it and reading. Yeah, you want to read it?
Yeah, and that's interestingly, the original phrase "God is in the details" had a slightly different connotation than the modern phrase "devil is in the details." The idea is that whatever one does should be done thoroughly, and the truth, if it exists, is in the details. The modern phrase does not speak of truth in this sense. The devil is in the details really only refers to problems or difficulties that result from the unforeseen nature of unexamined details. It refers to a catch hidden in the details rather than the truth in his abstract sense. So they took that, somehow somebody took that over too. They gave us, that's all I ever know. God, the devil's in the details.
All right.
But it's keeping us focused on the negative,
right,
scary side of things, whereas God is in it. God is in the details. It's in nature. What we see outside is
look
there.
At the skies. The skies declare His handiwork. So when you read JC Controls History, they won't use that one. JC.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, they won't use that one.
No.
But so it's interesting now when you start looking at an article or a headline. Just know that God is in the details. So don't just skim across some headline. Delve into into the article itself, and then for history, just start researching it, because when we started these major people, celebrities from over time, Sun Tzu, Genghis Khan, Charles Manson, you start reading about the details and you're like, wait a minute, something doesn't add up. And that's God giving you truth. He gives you discernment. And that's why we titled this, God is in the details. So this is something fascinating to Lou and I, who thought we knew a lot about history. And now we're learning that we don't know it, and
I'm even more excited about history now, because now I'm going to look at it again and try to relearn and discern again.
Right.
What I'm seeing, and it's going to open it all. I used to exhaust books in my high school library about World War II and Korean War and Civil War, Revolutionary War, and now I'm like, I get to go through all this stuff again and see it in another light and just start. And we're not trying to propagandize anything. I want to see, maybe there is
if we can get to the truth, but God says that He will reveal.
And He'll do it at the right time for everybody. And we've done a couple of episodes about apocalypse, and that's what we want to hammer home. And we didn't realize this till we started doing our research, is that apocalypse is not zombie stuff, and that's what the narrative of the world wants you to believe is that apocalypse is mushroom clouds. And
it's plagues. It's
there's scarcity everywhere. Everybody's starving and dying.
Society is doomed. 75% of the people can be wiped out from the vaccine.
Yeah.
No.
Apocalypse is awakening and unveiling. And I can't believe I didn't know what this word really meant. But it's just, and actually, in some writings, it's the book of Revelation could have been called the book of Apocalypse, because that's what it means, and that's what we're going through. And that's one thing I would like to emphasize is that we all need to go through Revelation. We need to see, and not just sitting here and going, I believe in Jesus Christ and He died on the cross and for our sins and rose again. That's the beginning of it. And Apocalypse is for everyone, and it's Christians can't sit back and go, well, I know what's going on, and you people need to wake up because Jesus is the answer.
Right.
You know what?
Or to think that you're going to be part of the rapture and you don't have to worry about anything that's going to go on. Christians, the modern day Christianity has created a bunch of... It's
corrupted as well.
Yeah.
And we don't know it all either. And Jesus says in the New Testament, it is not even for Him to know. It's not for us to know. Only God knows. And we can't
moment and the hour.
It is not for us. It is not for us to condemn people. It is not. We can't know. There's so much. That doesn't
mean we can't judge people.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
No, there is a difference. Righteous. It's If a pedophile is coming down your neighborhood and doing some stuff,
you need to judge them and do something about it immediately.
Yep. But you can't talk. You can't condemn somebody who's going through their path of truth and they're doing it honestly. You can't.
Right.
You can't judge
because
them.
we're all, and the one thing that I've learned by watching all these different people is that I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but we're all on this journey of seeking the truth. I just know that the people that YouTube is banning, that they don't want me to hear.
Yeah.
That's not right.
And here's a couple more of these guys. Here's we showed you. Oh, I haven't shown you this. This is a good site, Stolenhistory.net. And there's a bunch of people on here, and this site, they will censor. If you are mean or you just throw out, you don't actually argue in a sincere way, they'll kick you off. And that's their right.
Right.
But there are people on this site that are just looking at history again and trying to decipher. And there's some good research on this thing. There's plenty of stuff on there that I'll just go,
I can't go there.
But I'm still going to go there and look and read stuff because there's people actually honestly trying to get at truth.
Right.
And we are limited here because of our physical reality that we're in.
Right.
Because we are spiritual beings, but we are tied to this physical realm right now.
Right.
But these people are actually honestly looking for this. And then some of you guys have probably heard of this guy. He's on Facebook and Twitter. Anomaly. He's got a YouTube account. And I don't always agree with me. We don't even have to preface stuff with agreeing. We don't even have to do that.
Yeah, we don't. But he's good.
He's calling, and here's the thing I would look at is maybe a template for you when you're looking at folks for sources. Stop looking at any kind of mainstream media, and I'm talking about even off branch type people, right or left, no matter what. There's a lot of people on the right I used to love just even 6 months ago, and I'm like, nope, I'm done.
Right.
I move on. If they are still talking inside the fake binary of right and left, I would stop looking at them.
Right.
I would look at folks that call out everybody no matter what.
Right.
There are
no sacred cows.
Yeah. And then I really like Crow 777. Oh, I need to get rid of that.
What?
That thing here is
it's blocking.
There we go. Crow 777 radio. This guy's a thinker, but his message is also don't condemn people. Do not be the righteous one in this world and start condemning people. He asks questions and he tries to answer them too, and he has a lot of great guests.
Right.
This guy's really good. Now he gets some strikes on YouTube too. That's why he has his own site.
So Felipe's apo preposition equals out from ellipto exegesis rules.
That's the words.
Yeah. News has been corrupted completely. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Can you take that off? We know that the news is corrupted. We know that it's fake news, and this was one thing that we tried to get Rush Limbaugh to focus on. It was like a year or two ago. I can't remember when we did that.
It was like 2 years ago. We wanted him to.
He always points out MSNBC or clips and stuff, and we wanted him.
Well, no, he had his ban on MSNBC.
Yeah.
And we wanted to extend the ban to everything mainstream.
Yeah, right.
And start pointing out.
Okay, we know that the news is fake.
We know what they're going to do.
Mainstream. So how about we start pointing in? He could have gone along. I don't want to fault the man. He did amazing things. But imagine if he had boosted up or promoted, other entities. So this sort, mainstream media is fake, but these people over here are not, and that's what we want to do. Is we want to stop focusing I don't want to spend any energy on the fake news media.
And don't even share a terrible story just to go off on it.
Ignore them.
Just ignore it.
They're irrelevant, and go to somebody that's talking about.
And we just have a few examples here that we're pointing out, but there's a bunch of them I'm missing.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch.
And there's others that I listen to that I don't have on here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do quantum of conscious again.
Yeah.
And I don't, I can't sit here and go, okay, quantum of conscious is a Christian, and you guys got to need to follow this guy. I can't say that. I don't know what, but quantum of conscious knows that we are spiritual and that there is a creator and there's something bigger than us in this world.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you right now that Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and all these guys, they don't believe that crap. I'm not going to that last one.
Okay. Well, that's what we've got. Look, but the gist of our video that we want you to take from this is, the devil is not in the details. God is in the details, and once you figure that out, hope and joy is infinite. And
go into these guys with an open mind, because we wouldn't steer you to somebody we thought that was a bad guy or anything, a bad operator. And I'm going to say the best for last is Owen Benjamin. Right now he's on YouTube.
Well, he was banned from YouTube for so long, and then he was on D Live for a little while, and then D Live started getting all social justice warrior like, and now he
went to Trovo. Trovo banned him.
Trovo, and that was quick. That was like a day or two.
But right now it's Tea Time with Gary and Terry.
He's back on YouTube, and for some reason they're letting his streams. It's pretty funny.
But and with him, and I meant to save a box. I had a box day when I had the box day. Owen Benjamin have set up a platform called unauthorized.tv.
Right.
You can find all their stuff there always.
Right.
So check these guys out and go in with an open mind, and you might be shocked at first, but
especially with Owen, because Owen comes from California, and he has more of a potty mouth, or
he's actually.
But I don't care.
I don't. But the thing is, what's a potty mouth? Somebody.
Yeah.
They say on Netflix and on things now. The stuff that's said on the news.
Right.
It's freaking disgusting. Cardi B.
Oh, I know.
Artist of the Year.
Right.
Come on. So we would just say, look up the word apocalypse and the Greek meaning.
Yeah. If you want some homework, look up apocalypse and anarchy.
Anarchy is another good one.
Yeah.
Anarchy is not just a few months ago. I was like, whoa, that's not what it means, what I thought it meant.
All right.
That's another one too.
Words mean things, and that goes back to God is in the details, and you'll find that on everything that you start trying to deconstruct or debunk or get to the bottom of.
And it's all good. I was going to show one more thing. I was going to share that, because we started off saying that. Did we say about the system is broken?
Yeah, the system is corrupt and it's going to fall.
And so here's our here's a snapshot of our monetary system. Here's our U.S. national debt clock in real time.
Where's the derivatives?
The derivatives are down here. So, first, let's look up. So, I got my cursor here. U.S. national debt, 28 trillion. We can't fathom these numbers.
Right.
and you look at federal revenue, just over $3 trillion. And I'm not even worried about the per citizen part because, and eventually that I don't think that is how the equation is going to end up working. But federal spending, almost $7 trillion. Budget deficits over $3 trillion. We used to freak out in the Bush years when it was over 300 billion or 400 billion.
Right.
We're not even talking about the debt, the U.S. debt anymore. But you get down into derivatives,
and that's what matters.
That's a big
currency and derivatives. Holy cow.
619 trillion. And this is money betting on money, which money is not real.
Right.
And this system is going to fall, but it's not a bad thing. It's not anything to be,
right.
Oh my God. We don't want the system to collapse right away.
Right.
Because we're all dependent on it right now.
Right.
Which that's another one, pockets of the future. I should have had an example of him.
Yeah.
But U.S. total debt over 82 trillion. But you get down, you got derivatives here at what's after a trillion? Quadrillion or
quadrillion, I think. I'm not even sure.
But come down to the bottom. These are the liabilities. These are promised payments for the Medicare and Social Security. U.S. unfunded
liabilities.
160 trillion. And crypto is not going to get you out of this. Money is not going to get you out of this. And this is why we want to talk about going back to the beginning. It's a spiritual battle.
Right.
Politics and money they're not going to fix this thing.
Right. We are spirits
and the
in the material world.
We have a God. It's good.
Right.
We're okay.
And it looks all doom and gloom. It looks like we have this president that was installed, but it's not all doom and gloom because we're spirits in this material world. But we have a God who fights for us.
One thing this election's taught me is I'm not worried about who's president anymore.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
And it's hard to do because we're in the physical, but we've got to step back and go, wait a minute. You have this longing in your heart, your soul. And it's God.
And they've done everything to disconnect you from it, which is why they hijack things like
rainbows and
the
devils in the details and all that.
And so have fun with this, uncovering these hidden truths. They're there just waiting to be discovered. And so that's all we've got until next month.
Until April.
We hope to be on time. I do have no idea what we'll be talking about next month, but I'm sure that this
there'll be plenty of
divine simulation will present us with many potential opportunities to talk about. But in the meantime, just remember God is in the details and to have hope. This is a good time. This is the best apocalypse ever.
Best apocalypse. Remember, apocalypse is unveiling revelation.
And it's only going to get better.
Good stuff.